This is Andrew Wicklund with Project Risk Consultants. We're going to go over the scoring system in the Primavera Risk Register. So we're going to go to the Risk menu and open the Risk Register. So I've got a pre-built risk register here. This is on the sample EPC file that comes with the Pertmaster product, so you can see the name of that file right here towards the top. What I'm going to do in the risk register is go to the Edit menu and click on Risk Scoring. Now, the risk scores are right here in this pre-mitigated section. This is coming from the scoring system. So before you can score the risk, we need to set up this scoring system. The scoring system, most organizations already have a method to do this. If you don't have a method, it's another one of those areas where there's probably not a right way to do it. Everyone does this slightly differently, but basically you're setting up buckets. And based on those buckets, we can set up a tolerance level. So each section you have a drop down with the number of items in the scale. So this is probability in the top left. Probability is going to be right here on my y-axis. Then I've got impacts. Impacts are going to be on my x-axis. So I've got different impact types. Each section has one of these three dots on a button. You click that and it gives you your level definitions. So if this terminology isn't in line with what I use, and say I don't use a very high, I type in extreme, I can change the name, change the color, however I want to do that. So I can go ahead and change that however I want that to be. I can change the number of items in the scale as well. So if I said, well, I'm going 1 through 10, if you look here, all of those have gone over here now. So I've got on the y-axis all these different buckets, 1 through 10 now. As I said, there's no right or wrong way to do this. It's kind of what makes sense for your organization. Keep in mind when you're looking at qualitative risk, you're trying to get things in a bucket to view tolerance levels. So you can put some math behind this. You can put some risk theory behind this. Sometimes if you're just getting it in a section, so you can say, look, these are the ones we need to look at and these are the ones we don't. Maybe that's good enough. So you can get as complicated or as simple as you want with this. Sometimes for me, simple can be a lot better. Because when people really start thrashing around too far in the weeds, are you getting more value from it, or are you just making people think too hard and they zone out? So I think a lot of it is based on your audience and what you're trying to accomplish. I generally try and go a step further too and get single point estimates from people. So we've got probabilities here. I can type directly in these. So if I say, well, high for me isn't really 50, it's anything 40%. So very high is, or high is 40 to 70%. I can change those numbers just by typing in there. It will use these in the quantitative section for your initial values, but really normally we're going to override it and come up with some more discrete values and fine tune that, because right now a median being 30 to 50%. There's a huge difference between 30 and 50% for a statistical analysis. So now I've got my impact scales here. You can click add an impact type, and I could type in, these are all user defined. Cost and schedule are not user defined. You cannot remove them. They're always in there. Those are what you can actually translate into a schedule. Safety, performance, and some of these, I can type in these. Those are more, I say for example, failure to meet acceptance criteria for safety, performance, whatever you look at. Multiple deaths might be in your safety metric as it's unacceptable. That's very high. So when you get something that, maybe there's no schedule or cost impact, but it's a huge safety impact, normally what people check mark is this highest impact field. Because I don't want to average things and say, well, there's no cost, schedule, or performance impact, so it's no problem if multiple people die. Generally, I'm looking at the highest impact because I say, well, nobody could die, it won't cost us any time, it won't cost us any performance, but we'll lose $10 billion. Well, obviously I don't want to average that out. I want to use the highest impact because that's so damaging. So using the highest impact is the most typical thing people do. Now in um, the tolerance scale is set up, you type directly in these fields as well. So if I type in an 8, anything below an 8 is going to be a low. Anything 8 to 23 is going to be a medium. 23 and above is a high. I can once again change these buckets. So if I wanted to have more colors on there, once again, you can make it more complicated, but working on the stoplight system isn't such a bad thing. So when I look at this as well, these numbers, people get frustrated because unless your organization puts some mathematics behind the numbers, they might not mean anything. For me, I could put in 2 and 3, or I'll put in 1 here, and all my 1s are going to show up green. I'm typing directly in the cells. However I want to do that, and then all my 3s would show up in red. It's as much or as little thought as you put into what these values mean. So, if when your organization put them together they had no meaning, then they have no meaning. If there's a statistical formula behind what the numbers mean, that may be the case as well. But when you look at that, these numbers correspond to this tolerance scale. So the theory is it's a stoplight system. The green we'll ignore. The yellow ones we better look at. And then the red ones, those are an unacceptable level of risk. Now, we're going to take it a step further because an unacceptable level of schedule risk, we don't truly know until we model it in the schedule and see how that impacts us relative to float and everything else. Something in this yellow section, something in the green section in theory, depending on the float, could hurt us more than something in the red. But this gives us a good indicator as to whether the risk is at an unacceptable level or not. Once you get the scoring system how you'd like, you can click Save and save this template off. You might save different scoring system templates based on the size of the project. So $10 million projects are different than $100 million projects. So you can save those, put them on the server. There is a field for manageability and proximity. A lot of organizations don't use those, but it's a multiplier for your risk score. There is a good walkthrough in the help file on the Pertmaster Risk Register. So I'd recommend if this wasn't thorough and robust enough for you, go through and go to the help file, the risk register tutorial. It's under in the Gantt chart view, help tutorials, and it's the risk register one. It is very thorough. It goes step by step through every button click. So I'll go ahead and click OK, and you'll notice now my scores are the 3s, 2s, and the 1s. Everything is it's relative to the scoring system. So that's an overview of the scoring system. And we'll move on to some other areas of qualitative risk analysis in the other sections.